defecting from the whole thing. All the intelligence stuff that was going on, all the politics, all of the backstabbing, sort of pissing me off. And Andrew was in a mode of self-glorification to the point where it was getting, the oxygen was very thin around him. So he eventually formed an alliance with another Ukrainian Orthodox church and formed, a kind of a sustainable lifestyle based on that. And he had a lot of other priests and monks from different denominations, different Orthodox churches who joined his church, especially once he had the kind of legitimacy of his involvement with some legitimate Orthodox churches. So he attracted some other people, but some of the people he attracted were less than savory characters. And two of them were monks who were involved in rare book theft. These were guys who made their living going from library to library, whether it was university libraries, public libraries, personal collections, and stealing books. And they would steal these books. They had these big voluminous robes that we mentioned at the beginning of the program. And they would hide books. They would take them out to a van that they had that had equipment in there for erasing the ink markings of libraries, for raising the seals, like the impressions of the, I don't know what to call them, like the paper seals from the libraries, so they could eradicate all this stuff and then sell the books, to collectors. They were making a living doing this, and they were based in New York City. They had an operation in Queens, in Jamaica, Queens, and they had equipment up there for processing these stolen books. And they would occasionally rebind them, or they would tear out the illustrations and the maps and sell them separately, which was, a horrible crime.
Yes.
It was absolutely horrible and unbelievable. So they would do that. And they belonged to the Slavonic Orthodox Church. And Andrew knew about this. He knew what they were up to, and as long as they were kicking back stuff to him, he didn't really mind it very much, as long as they didn't involve him in the actual theft. So Andrew's interest was always in books of an occult nature. So he had a small collection, a growing collection of old tomes, of various kinds. And as it turned out, he had stacks of things in boxes, manuscripts, and all that sort of thing. I was over there one day, and the rest is history. Opened up the box and saw a manuscript with a Greek name, and we didn't know what it meant, Necronomicon. We thought, it means something to do with the dead. You have to understand that we didn't read H.P. Lovecraft. We weren't reading that stuff. We had no knowledge of it back in the 70s. It wasn't part of our lifestyle, to read occult fiction.
So you'd never heard of
Gothic horror or stuff. It just wasn't there. We didn't know. So for us, the name meant nothing. Just that it meant something to do with death. With death, and there were some strange sigils and stuff in it, and it looked pretty cool. And that was really the discovery of it. I mean, it was just right there. We said, let's do something with this.
So you borrowed it for a while, photocopied it, and then gave it back.
Right.
And it ended up disappearing, right?
The original, yes. This was due to the fact that these book thieves then were shortly thereafter arrested by the feds. And their arrest made national headlines. It made headlines in the New York Times, the Christian Science Monitor, everywhere, front page, below the fold, but front page. It was the largest rare book heist in the history of the United States. These guys had pulled off something unbelievable. And there's lists, very partial lists in the newspaper accounts of the universities they had gone to and the books that they had stolen. And it's, like I say, very partial. They had stolen books all over the country, including Canada and Mexico. So I think they had to make restitution somehow, give back the books they did have. They still had in their possession, and give an accounting of other books. But, I mean, the task was daunting. There's so many books that have been stolen that I don't know if they ever gave a full accounting. But the documentation that exists is only that they stole books from all the major libraries, from all the major universities, some of which were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when they were arrested, Andrew went nuts. He was very frightened that he was going to be implicated in all of this, so he destroyed whatever he had that the monks had given him to make sure that he would not be implicated.
So do you think it's possible that that's when the original of the Necronomicon was destroyed?
Well, the one that I saw, I'm sure, was destroyed. He destroyed everything. I mean, he had some very good books there. It was a shame. He had some old books on astrology, on palmistry, different languages, in French and Latin. I mean, there was a lot of interesting stuff that he had which disappeared. I mean, after he died, no one's seen it. No one's seen any of it. He destroyed a lot of stuff. I mean, there was a lot of political stuff around Andrew lately, towards the end of his life as well. So, he kept those. He had some ornate furnaces, stoves. These porcelain stoves, like from the Renaissance period. Some beautiful pieces of. He was an antique collector. He loved antiques. And he, these were coal-fired, and he just kept those things running day and night, from what I understand, as he was burning, a lot of stuff that he had. Scared to death, he would wind up in jail along with the monks who belonged to his church.
And how did he end up dying? Is he dead?
Well, it's a little spooky. People say it was suicide, and probably that's what it was. One of his hobbies was in gilding metal. So he would, put gold leaf on something, or he would play with metals a lot and with gilt. And you use arsenic in that process of electroplating. And the story is that somehow a vial of arsenic fell and he died from the fumes. But the story doesn't hold water because he had a cat in the laboratory with him, his little place in the Bronx, and the cat survived. He didn't die from any fumes. It appears as though it was either murder or suicide.
Wow.
It might have been suicide. His father had committed suicide a few years before.
Right.
So it's possible that the guilt of it had just weighed upon him. But there were political situations as well. The Ukrainian church that he was involved with suddenly came into its own with the fall of the Soviet Union. And the life that he had been living up until then was being threatened. The heads of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church from the Ukraine were coming to the United States to kind of reassert their authority over the parishes and the dioceses here. And I think that Andrew knew he was on his way out one way or the other. So who knows? It could have been a combination of things. I just don't know.
Well, it's so interesting, there are so many of these things in history, and you discuss a lot of them in your books, where something really significant happened, and then the proof of it disappears. And it's happened to me too, so I know it happens.
Sure, it happens a lot.
But it seems to happen really, with these significant documents. I mean, I guess you have a little bit of sympathy for Joseph Smith in a way. His original gold plates disappeared.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it happens. I'm sure it happens all the time.
So the story is just at this point you were hanging out at the Magical Child shop. You knew Simon, and you still knew Andrew, and you knew that you became aware that he had this book, and so you copied it for yourself and gave it back, and then you and Simon and I guess some other people translated it and prepared it for publication.
That's right.
Okay, and then it basically spent a little while in low circulation with limited edition copies being printed, and then Avon Books printed a paperback version, and it became this huge hit.
Yeah, we didn't expect it. We had done a lot of thinking about this book. I mean, it was Herman Slater who said, you've got to be kidding me. You don't have the real Necronomicon, do you? And we said, well, what is that?